I never imagined a millionaire would reclaim my wife after 3 years of heartbreaking distance. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the living room. Silence wrapped around me like a thick fog. My fingers trembled as I picked up the photo, a grin frozen in time. Sarah's laughter echoing in my memory. It had been 3 long years since she left, 3 years filled with echoing emptiness. Sarah had been my world. We had dreams, plans, and promises. But one day, without warning, she turned. "I need to find myself," she had said. The words cut deep. Just like that, she was gone. My heart shattered. I was left alone in a house that felt like a graveyard of lost love. The smell of her perfume still lingered, mixed with the scent of stale takeout and sadness. Time passed, but the pain didn't fade. I buried myself in work, surrounded by paperwork and ringing phones. Friends drifted away, the comfort of their company slipping through my fingers like sand. I craved the warmth of her smile, the softness of her touch. My nights were restless, haunted by dreams of what could have been. Then came the news that knocked the breath out of me. A post on social media, Sarah with him. A tall, charismatic man, dressed in an expensive suit, arms draped around her waist. The world went blurry. I felt the tightness in my chest, a panic that beckoned tears I thought I had long since dried. How could she? Did she forget our life? Turned out he was a millionaire. He had the world at his feet, the charm of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Observers gushed about him, commenting on his wealth and status like a badge of honor. I was struck by the bitter taste of envy, a pang of anger that cut me more than any betrayal. Days turned into weeks, and she was everywhere. Parties, charity events, smiling pictures splashed across my screens. How was I supposed to move on knowing she was out there living a life I longed to share? But then a twist. One evening I received a text. "We need to talk. It's important." My heart raced. The name appeared on the screen, Sarah. The world felt like it paused. What could she want? Would she explain? Would she apologize? Or had the millionaire finally tired of her? I stared at the blinking cursor, my brain racing. This conversation could change everything. Maybe, just maybe, hope flickered like a candle in the dark, daring me to reach out. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The moment I read Sarah's message, a whirlwind of emotions spiraled inside me: fear, anticipation, and an aching hope I tried to bury. I hesitated, staring at the screen, wondering if this was a cruel twist of fate or a chance to mend what had been broken. After what felt like an eternity, I finally replied. "Where and when?" She responded almost instantly, suggesting our old coffee shop, the very place where we had spent countless afternoons dreaming about our lives together. The thought of stepping into that familiar cafe sent a shiver through me. It had been so long since I had been there, the memories of laughter and warmth now tinged with sorrow. What if I couldn't bear it? What if seeing her hurt more than I remembered? The sun hung low in the sky as I made my way to the shop. I inhaled deeply, letting the familiar aroma of coffee waft over me, mingling with the palpable tension. Each step felt heavier than the last, dread tying knots in my stomach. I pushed the door open and was immediately greeted by the cheerful clatter of cups and the hum of conversations. It felt strange and alien, like visiting a parallel universe. And there she was, Sarah. She sat at our usual table, fidgeting with a cup in her hands, her hair falling perfectly around her face just like I remembered. But it was the sadness in her eyes that struck me the most. I took a deep breath and approached. Her gaze lifted, meeting mine with a mix of relief and apprehension. "Hi," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the noise of the cafe. "Hi," I replied, emotions spilling into my voice. "It's been a while." "Yeah, it has," she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I sat down across from her, the weight of the past settling between us. The silence was heavy, full of all the things left unsaid. She finally broke it, her voice trembling. I didn't know how to reach out. These past few years they've been hard for me. What do you mean? My heart raced. I was desperate for clarity but terrified of the answers I thought I needed to find myself. She started, her eyes welling up. But in the process I lost myself too. I wanted to believe that there was something better out there. Her voice trailed off, and for a moment, I caught a glimpse of the woman I once knew, vulnerable, raw, and honest. I feel trapped, she continued, wiping her cheek where a single tear threatened to fall. I thought I could move on, but every day felt like wearing a mask. Her confession struck a chord deep within me. I remembered my own hollow days, grappling with the fact that she had been gone. And him? I asked, my heart aching as the words formed. What about the millionaire? He provided a distraction, she admitted, her eyes looking down as if she was ashamed. But he can't fill the void you left. I thought it would be easier to start over, to erase our memories, but all it did was push me to face the truth. The room blurred around us, the sounds, the laughter, everything faded until it was just Sarah and me. I reached across the table, hesitating just for a moment before grasping her hand, feeling the warmth seep into my aching heart. It's not too late, Sarah, I whispered. We can find a way back together. Her eyes locked onto mine, a flicker of hope igniting between us. But just as the warmth began to grow, the door swung open. A loud voice interrupted, and my heart plummeted as I recognized the towering figure behind the voice. It was him, the millionaire. He strode into the place as if he owned it, scanning the room until his gaze landed on Sarah. My breath caught in my throat as confusion swept over her face. Panic surged through me. What is he doing here? I asked, my voice thick with venom. She opened her mouth to explain, but the man closed the distance quickly, leaning down to place a possessive kiss on her cheek. I could see the way it unsettled her, the way she flinched at his touch. Hey babe. Sorry I'm late. He boomed, a grin spreading across his face. Is this a date or can I join? In that moment everything shattered. Any hope I held flared up and dimmed, leaving me lost in the haze of despair. Sarah looked between him and me, her expression a whirlwind of conflicted emotions. All I could do was recoil in silence, my heart breaking anew as the realities of love, choice, and betrayal crashed down around us. Then, with a newfound resolve sparking in Sarah's eyes, she took a deep breath and opened her mouth to speak. Just as she began, another bomb dropped, an unexpected voice from the crowd, a stranger seated nearby, calling out with an air of urgency that echoed through the cafe. I think you really need to hear this. It's about your husband, Sarah. The color drained from her face, her eyes widening in disbelief. I felt the ground shift beneath me as a wave of dread washed over, and the cafe erupted in murmurs, all eyes glued on Sarah and the million-dollar life she had chosen that was about to crumble. As the voice echoed through the cafe, the air thickened with tension, a palpable energy stemming from the stranger's unexpected claim. I felt my heart race, caught between the desire to flee and the instinct to stay grounded in this moment. My eyes darted nervously between Sarah and the man beside her, whose grin faltered as the room's attention shifted dramatically. Excuse me. Sarah's voice barely broke the silence, a tremor lacing her words. The weight of the moment felt like gravity pulling us all towards an uncertain fate. I know this is random, but I think you need to know something about your husband. The stranger's demeanor had turned serious. His gaze focused on Sarah with an intensity that brought her defenses up. I don't know how else to say it. He's been cheating on you. The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. A flicker of disbelief crossed Sarah's face, her grip on reality clearly wavering. I watched as shock coursed through her, a reaction that stemmed from the very core of her being. What are you talking about? She managed, her voice wavering. I could only sit in muted horror, struggling to comprehend the implications. The millionaire beside her turned visibly agitated, his previous bravado now cracking under the pressure of this revelation. Who are you? What do you want? He spat, leaning aggressively towards the stranger, as if trying to erase his words with sheer force, but the stranger held his ground unperturbed. I want you to know the truth, he responded, each word deliberate. I've seen him with another woman. Many times. The cafe buzzed with whispers, some patrons leaning in to catch the full impact of the unfolding story. The reality seemed to fracture around us, a strange mix of grief and hope building as I watched Sarah's expression twist between disbelief and a growing sense of dread. Time seemed to stand still as she struggled with the barrage of emotions. I longed to reach for her again, to anchor her in the chaos, but fear kept my limbs paralyzed. The million-dollar life she had chosen now stood on the precipice of unraveling. Look, I didn't come here to cause trouble, the stranger continued, his tone softening as he addressed Sarah. But you deserve to hear the truth. You deserve better. Sarah's hands trembled, and she shifted her gaze from the stranger to the millionaire, who was visibly losing his composure. Is this true? She asked, her voice small yet sharp, piercing through the cacophony of murmurs. He hesitated, a microcosm of shifting emotions playing across his face. It's complicated, Sarah, he stammered. I can explain. Explain what? She interjected, her anger boiling to the surface. That you've been lying to me? Was I just some trophy to flaunt? I felt her pain as if it were my own, the intensity of her heartbreak washing over me like a tidal wave. It made me wish for a moment that I could wrap her in my arms and shield her from this world of deception, to whisper that I would always be there for her. But this moment belonged to her, and I didn't want to interfere. I wanted her to reclaim her power. A tear slipped down her cheek as realization solidified, refueling her resolve. Turning to me, her eyes flickered with desperation. I don't know what to believe anymore, she confessed, her vulnerability stark against the crowd. It hurts to think that you could be right. The millionaire stepped closer, attempting to salvage what was left. Sarah, please. I would never betray you, he insisted, desperation oozing from every word. Everything you heard is a misunderstanding. I love you. In stark contrast, I sensed her walls beginning to rise again, the crack of uncertainty hardening into confusion. If she chose to believe him, everything we had just opened between us could vanish once more. I felt a swell of sorrow as memories of laughter and understanding flickered in my mind, nearly drowned out by the chaos. Suddenly, the stranger interjected, his voice breaking through the tension again. You're not the only one looking for answers, he said, gesturing at the million-dollar life Sarah had built. Did you also know about the business affair? The woman he's been seeing? Before another word could escape, Sarah's expression shifted again, her face paling as the implications sank in. My heart raced as she took a step back, a mix of betrayal and hurt flashing through her eyes. In that moment, I saw a glimmer of the resolve I had hoped for, the strength of a woman breaking free from the chains of betrayal. But just as I prepared to reach for her, to bridge the distance between our damaged souls once more, the cafe's door swung open wide. A figure appeared, tall and imposing, dressed in an expensive suite, a striking resemblance to the millionaire that sent an icy shiver down my spine. Elizabeth, the newcomer bellowed, his voice echoing above the clamor. There you are. I've been looking for you. Sarah's expression shifted yet again. She appeared frozen, trapped within a whirlwind of revelations, despair, and the unexpected identity of a new player in this intricate drama. I felt the reality of my own heartbreaking distance from her, once again threatened as the landscape of our lives continued to shift under our feet. And just like that, in a matter of seconds, a moment of potential healing was replaced by a new daunting reality. The cafe, once a sanctuary of cherished memories, had become a prison of uncertainty, holding secrets that would threaten everything we once believed. The stranger's words lingered in my mind like an unsettled storm, leaving echoes of disbelief in their wake. I watched as Sarah's brow furrowed, confusion entangling her features as she assessed the new arrival, the man who had called out to her with such urgency. He stepped forward, drawing closer to Sarah, and I could sense a shift in the energy that had just begun to crack open the facade of lies. Elizabeth, he repeated, that single word weighted with familiarity as he reached out for her. You don't need to be around these people right now. Let's go. The million-dollar life she had constructed, the relationship so finely woven together, felt like a delicate tapestry suddenly unraveled. I could hardly breathe, caught like a small fish in a swift and murky current, tugged deeper into uncertainty. Who was this man and how did he know Sarah? Her eyes darted from him to the millionaire and then briefly to me, as if she were searching for some grounding, some marker of safety in a landscape now riddled with contradictions. Who are you? Her voice, once full of strength, was now a timid whisper, revealed in the widening chasm of her confusion. The stranger stood his ground, unwavering yet patient. The chaos around us fading into the background, I felt a surge of protectiveness flare within me, each nerve ending igniting as I fought against my own instinct to step forward. "Sarah, you don't have to listen to him," I called out, but the desperate plea unraveled into a whisper lost in the whirlwind of emotions swirling around us. "I'm here to help you," the man insisted, drawing closer. "We can talk away from all of this." Despite the tension crackling like static in the air, I caught a glimpse of something beyond Sarah's arched brow. Fear? Yes, but also a spark of hope flickering in the face of despair that was unnaturally reassuring. My heart ached, torn between wanting to shelter her and allowing her the autonomy to make her own choices amidst the chaos. The millionaire lunged forward, his face a volatile mix of anger and desperation. "She doesn't need your help. You're just a stranger spreading lies." There was an edge of panic in his voice that was hard to ignore, suggesting perhaps darker truths lay hidden beneath the surface. "Am I?" the stranger shot back, maintaining composure under pressure. "Or am I just the messenger?" "Sarah, you deserve the whole truth, not just the version that keeps you comfortable." As he spoke, I watched Sarah's face change, a slow realization creeping in. The lines of confusion began to blur with an intensity of doubt that I wished could lead her back to me. Instead, it fanned the flames of her uncertainty. The cafe's atmosphere felt suffocating, thick with the weight of scrutiny and hushed whispers, but amidst it all, a moment unfolded that broke through the tension like a sudden ray of sunlight. "Can you at least tell me who you are?" she asked at last, her voice steadying. "David," he replied, and it struck me like lightning, sending electric waves through the air. The name echoed with familiarity. "And it's about time you learned the truth about Caleb." My heart twisted painfully at the mention of the name she had spoken so often. The love that had once bloomed before this horrible mess had taken root. I felt the desperation clawing at Matt. His all must be some twisted coincidence. Perhaps this man wasn't there to save her, but to deepen her despair. "Caleb?" she repeated, her brow furrowing further. "What do you mean?" David stepped closer, casting a glance back to the millionaire before speaking again. "He's been running things in the shadows, not just your marriage, but your life." With his words came an array of emotions: fear, confusion, an unwilling curiosity. I could see layers of protection beginning to peel from her heart, only to be replaced by haunting questions I could not answer. Before she could respond, the community around us surged with gossip, morphing the cafe from a sanctuary into an arena of emotional upheaval. "You've surprised us all," a woman in red murmured nearby. "But it's better for everyone to know." "Please stop this," pleaded Sarah, both to David and the watchers, her voice cracking with the weight of her own vulnerability. And then, as if to echo the chaos within her, the cafe door burst open once again, and a familiar silhouette stepped through. Caleb. My chest tightened. He was back, unfolding in this place where truths collided and hearts shattered. I held my breath, a desperate wish hanging in the air. If she chose him now, there would be no way to rewind the clock. "Sarah, I need to explain. You deserve the truth," he uttered, eyes darting toward David, desperation etched across his face. This was a perfect storm where every shattered promise converged, hanging by a brittle thread. As the room spiraled into uncertainty, I realized that the choices made in these fleeting seconds would define how much further we would fall or whether we would find a way to rise. And that moment, I watched helplessly as Sarah's gaze drifted between the man she had loved and the one who claimed to hold answers, standing at the crossroads of betrayal and the unfamiliar hope I longed to nurture within her heart. I could sense the shifting tides around us, and just like that, the stakes had never felt higher. The tension was palpable, electrifying every breath I took as I observed Sarah caught in a tempest of confusion, disappointment, and a certain spark of newfound determination. The cafe, once a welcoming haven, now felt like a battleground where allegiances were tested, truths demanded, and hearts lay exposed. "Sarah, please," Caleb begged, his voice trembling under the weight of his words. "I know I hurt you, but you deserve to hear my side." His eyes, usually so filled with warmth, were shadowed with guilt, and I could see the turmoil roiling beneath them. Sarah's expression shifted, flickering between anger and uncertainty, drawing a sharp breath that felt like a physical manifestation of her struggle. She was intertwined in a web of love and betrayal, the threads pulling tight around her, threatening to suffocate the burgeoning clarity she had begun to find. "Your side?" David interjected, stepping forward with a fervent resolve. "You had your chance to speak your truth, Caleb. For 3 years you've silenced the truth. It's time someone else spoke up." The fire in his voice was unwavering, a beacon cutting through the gathering storm. Caleb's posture tightened. He was no longer the confident figure I had once admired. Instead, he looked like a man cornered in both senses of the word. "You think you know everything but you don't," he snapped back, then shifted his gaze to Sarah. "You think you can trust him? He's as much a stranger as you think I am." Her face twisted with anguish, confusion morphing into clear distress, as if she wanted to close her eyes against the onslaught of accusations but found herself unable to look away from the truth that loomed over her. "Caleb, if you loved me, why did you keep secrets?" The anguish in her voice cut through the temperature of the room, freezing all conversations and drawing the attention of every filling crevice in the cafe. "You promised to always be honest with me." The words hung in the air, weighty and damning, and I found myself leaning against the table, the fabric of my own heart fraying as I realized how fragile hope could be under such glaring scrutiny. The pulse of the cafe beat with an uneasy rhythm as Emily, a regular from the barista section, spoke up. "Maybe you should listen to David. He's been trying to protect you, Sarah." There was a murmur of agreement from the other patrons, their whispers weaving a chorus of unexpected solidarity. Suddenly, the oppressive atmosphere began to shift, as small threads of connection emerged among strangers, people wanting to support the woman unraveling before them. "Just tell me one thing, Caleb," her voice dropped low, trembling. "Why didn't you come back sooner? Why wait until now?" It felt like a deep wound being probed, raw and unhealed. Layers of trust peeled back to reveal the rawness beneath. Because he paused, jaw clenching, eyes clouding over with the weight of everything left unsaid. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you were happy." Although his words were laced with remorse, they landed like reckless stones thrown upon delicate waters, sending ripples of shock and disbelief through Sarah. "Happy?" she echoed, a hollow laugh escaping her lips. "You thought living without you meant I was happy?" The pain in her words sliced through the cacophony, striking a chord within me. Each syllable hinted at the years lost to uncertainty, of moments stolen by silence. My heart ached for her. For both of them, each was a prisoner of their own shadows, caught in a battle between love and deception. "Enough." David's voice rose above the tumult, casting a defiant spell over the room. "Sarah deserves to know the truth about what really happened. And it's not about your misplaced ideals, Caleb. It's about your actions, about the chain of pain you've left in your wake." For a moment, Caleb seemed to crumble under that weight, standing there like a man stripped bare, vulnerability radiating from him like a palpable force. Yet, rather than step forward to defend himself, he began to shake his head, conflicted and defeated. "Maybe I am the liar," he muttered, voice shaking as if he himself were shocked by the revelation. "But it's not just me who has kept secrets. What do you really know about David? You think he's here to save you, but the truth is he's wrapped up in this mess too." A gasp rippled through the crowd, a collective breach of trust. Suddenly, all eyes turned to David, suspicion lacing the air. "What does that mean?" I could hear a woman whisper. "Sarah," David began, uncertainty flitting across his face as he contrasted the growing panic around him. I was part of what happened with Caleb. There are things I still haven't told you." The world narrowed to that single admission, every breath in my chest catching painfully as Sarah's eyes widened, the faith she had slowly begun to place in him now teetering dangerously on the edge of disbelief. "How could you?" Disappointment dripped from her words like melting ice, hanging heavy between them. "How could you be part of this and not tell me?" "I didn't want you to hurt," he pleaded, hands raised in a desperate gesture of defense. "I thought shielding you from these truths was the only way to protect you from the storm." But Caleb, now emboldened by half-formed truths, stepped forward. "Protecting her? Is that what you call it? Do you even see the pain you're causing right now?" As emotions clashed violently, I felt the ground shift beneath us, all truths spiraling out of control and secrets now revealing themselves as tormented ghosts. The storm of conflicting loyalties threatened to drown out the flickering flame of hope, but buried within the chaos was a small flicker that I couldn't ignore. A voice whispering that sometimes, within the darkest moments, the heart finds the most unexpected pathways to redemption. Yet, just as I reached out toward that fragile light, a deafening crash echoed behind me. A window shattered, disrupting the swirling tension and throwing shards of glass into the air like the undeclared chaos around us. I turned, breath hitching, to see a figure at the entrance, silhouetted against the fading light. "Stop the charade." they shouted, and my heart sank as I recognized the face that wielded the chaos. It was Nina, the woman from Caleb's past who had once haunted our lives. Her revelation slipped from the shadows, threatening to turn our fragile world upside down yet again as the wind howled outside. Tearing through our understood realities, I grasped for something solid, any stable ground amidst crumbling trust and fragile revelations. But one thing was certain. None of us were truly ready for the storm that was about to break. The air vibrated with tension as Nina stepped into the cafe, the weight of her presence undeniable. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on Caleb, whose face morphed into a mix of surprise and panic. "Nina, what are you doing here?" he stammered, his usual composure unraveling. "Did you think you could just wipe me from your life like I was a bad dream?" She shot back, her voice sharp and relentless. "I'm here to remind you of the truth, Caleb. The truth you've tried so hard to bury." Whispers rippled through the cafe like tiny waves crashing on each other, leaving only mounting confusion in their wake. Sarah stood frozen, the fight momentarily drained from her. It was as if the very foundation of her resolve was cracking piece by piece, under the relentless pressure of the unexpected intrusion. "Who is she?" David questioned, stepping toward Nina like a soldier to shield his own. But the force of her arrival was unstoppable. She was a storm that had rolled in, uninvited and ready to wreak havoc on the fragile ground we had all tiptoed upon. "I am someone who knows the truth about Caleb's past," Nina replied, her gaze hardening. "I'm the one person he didn't want you to find out about, Sarah." Caleb's face paled, his panic morphing into anger. "You need to leave, Nina. This isn't your fight anymore." "Oh, but it is," she countered, her voice ringing clear through the chaos. "You've been telling everyone your sappy story about love and regret, but I know the secrets that twist behind those pretty words." Fear twisted in my gut. Even as I witnessed this confrontation unfold, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were spiraling deeper into a pit where the light barely grazed the walls. "Caleb, tell me the truth," Sarah said again, her voice a whisper that barely escaped her lips. "Is she right? What else haven't you told me?" Caleb hesitated, his throat working as if the words were lodged within him like stones, each one heavier than the last. The cafe remained a suspended moment, the patrons holding their breaths, waiting for his admission to shift the atmosphere once more. It's complicated," he finally managed, his voice strained and broken. "Nina was in my life when everything fell apart." His paws hung heavily, as if he was weighing whether to reveal the depths of his past sins. Nina cut in, her words like arrows piercing the silence. "I was someone he thought he had a chance with, someone he thought he could run to when things got tough. But it didn't last, did it, Caleb? Because you ran away from your problems instead of facing them." Understanding hit Sarah hard. Her eyes filled with disbelief, the shards of her heart weaving together a tapestry of betrayal that she had never imagined facing. My own chest tightened at the sight of her anguish. I felt almost immobilized, the urgency of their broken hearts rendering me helpless. "Is it true, Caleb? Did you run back to her?" Her voice trembled, each word a plea for clarity, an attempt to seek solace in the chaos. Before you, I didn't know what I wanted. Nina was the comfort of familiarity," he stammered, anguish carving deeper lines in his face. "But Sarah, I love you. It's always been you. I didn't know how to tell you the truth without hurting you." A collective sigh erupted in the cafe, the tension somehow palpable as I felt the walls of their world constricting tighter around them. My heart sank as Caleb clung to a sliver of hope, because truthfully, it felt like he was drenched in a darkness of his own making, desperately trying to swim to the surface while dragging everyone else under with him. Sarah's expression wobbled between fury and heartbreak. "Thanks for that ambiguous confession, Caleb. Just what I needed in this moment of betrayal." But just as it seemed she might break free of the spiral of chaos, Nina stepped closer. "You deserve the truth, Sarah," she said softly, an unexpected vulnerability surfacing in her demeanor. "What you don't know is that Caleb isn't the only one with secrets." Anticipation crackled in the air as all eyes turned to Nina, the balance of power subtly shifting. "Had my reasons for being with him, just as he had his reasons for leaving me," she continued. "But there were things we never discussed, things about his life that tie us all together." A hushed stillness blanketed the room, the muffled sound of breaths catching in collective urgency. "What are you talking about?" David pressed, scrutinizing her with an intensity that conveyed more than mere defense. Nina hesitated, a shadow of uncertainty flickering across her features. 3 years ago, before Caleb and I ended, something happened. Something that could change everything you think you know. Fear clawed up my throat, and for a moment, I wrestled against the instinct to feel anything other than dread. The storm outside raged on, an echo of our internal turmoil as I braced myself for the revelation that could either mend or shatter the fragile glass of trust left between us. "Please, just tell us what you mean," Sarah urged, her voice breaking under the weight of the precarious moment. Nina met Caleb's gaze, the storm of emotions swirling between them reflected in her eyes. "I can't pretend like I don't care anymore, Caleb. Not when your past suddenly entangles itself with her future." And with that, the horizon darkened, the winds of truth threatening to upend everything we thought we'd protected. As if time itself had frozen, I felt the pulse of inevitability looming, the realization that our fates were irrevocably entwined in secrets yet to be unraveled. Barely breathing, I knew. Whatever truth Nina was about to unleash would not only reshape the afternoon but change all our lives forever. The cafe felt as though it had taken a collective breath, suspended in an emotional limbo as we awaited Nina's words, poised to shatter the fragile landscape of our lives. I could see how deeply the confrontation was etched on Sarah's face, the trembling lips forced into a thin line, her hands curling tightly into fists at her sides. She was a lighthouse in a tempest, desperately trying to hold onto the light that flickered between her and Caleb, but the waves of uncertainty crashed against her resolve. 3 years ago, Nina started, her voice wavering slightly, the ferocity of her earlier tone softened by an undercurrent of emotion. "I didn't just know Caleb. I knew what he was hiding. I didn't want to believe it, but I saw it unfold. A secret that made us both forget who we were." I could feel the tide of anxiety swell in the room, the faces of patrons frozen midway through their conversations as they veered into our storm. I felt an involuntary shiver run down my spine, a premonition of the chaos that might unfold should Nina reveal whatever dark shadow loomed over Caleb's past. "Caleb," she said softly, "you remember the night it happened, don't you?" Her eyes softened, a flicker of something akin to nostalgia mingled with regret passing over her features. Caleb's expression shifted, taut with the weight of memories he had buried. "I don't want to remember," he said, his voice low and shaky. "You know I've tried to forget." "How can you?" Nina whispered, her voice cracking. "It's not just your past. It's intertwined with everything, with Sarah and the baby." The cafe seemed to gasp as that final word slipped from her lips like a knife, cleaving through the silence and exposing the rawness beneath. Sarah's face drained of color, her eyes widening in fear and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she choked out, each syllable heavy with a new layer of dread. "What baby?" Caleb's hands trembled at his sides, a mixture of panic and sorrow in his eyes. "Nina, please let her finish, Caleb," Sarah demanded, the pain in her voice morphing into something powerful, a burgeoning anger glinting like glass sharpened to a point. "If this has to do with a child, then I deserve to hear it." Nina swallowed hard, the words caught in her throat like sandpaper. 3 years ago, Caleb and we weren't just friends. We were parents to a little girl. A baby we lost before she could even take her first breath. A moment that shattered us both. The air thickened, constricting around us like a vice. My heart pounded as the weight of her confession sank in, the bitter truth hitting me like ice water sloshing over a boiling heart. Sarah's eyes were filled with confusion, betrayal, and a deep, intoxicated sorrow. I could feel the pieces of her world fracturing again, the delicate glass she'd spent so long reconstructing crashing down around her. "Why didn't you tell me?" she cried, turning to Caleb, the pain in her voice cutting through the tension like a well-aimed dart. "I didn't know how. I thought I could move on, that we could move on, but every moment I looked at you, the guilt consumed me." Caleb's voice was desperate, raw with honesty. "I was afraid you would leave me if you ever knew." Nina shifted her weight, the remnants of her vulnerability now laced with sadness. "It's not just Caleb's secret, Sarah. Changed me too. I couldn't face him after losing her. It tore us apart in ways that we never recovered from. I ran thinking it was best for everyone, but here we are, caught in this web of pain and memory." A long silence settled over the cafe as the truth seeped through the cracks of our despair. I shifted uncomfortably as I realized the emotional turmoil threatening to engulf us all, like a wave of dark water roiling and ready to swallow us whole. "Why now, Nina?" Sarah's voice had hardened, brittle as glass threatening to shatter. Why bring this up now when everything seems so uncertain? I didn't want to. Nina's voice cracked under the strain. But then I saw you two together, saw the light that burned between you. I realized that whatever shadows Caleb had buried from your past would only come back to haunt you if I didn't share the truth. I don't even know what to say, Sarah murmured, throbbing emotions crashing over her like waves against a rocky shore. So you both chose silence? You chose compartmentalizing over sharing something that could have held power? With tears pooling in her eyes, Sarah turned to Caleb, desperately searching for a sign of clarity, something to hold on to as the foundation beneath their relationship seemed to quake. How could you lie to me? How could you let me love you without knowing who you really are? I was scared, he confessed, the remorse in his voice palpable. Scared that if you knew, you wouldn't want me anymore. But I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could protect you from my past. Her gaze softened for a heartbeat before hardening again. A tempest of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. You're still not telling me everything, are you? This all feels like it was meant to surface for some reason, and I can't help but feel that there's more. And just as the tension in the air reached a breaking point, I caught a flash of something behind Nina's eyes, conflicted, full of the knowledge she wasn't ready to share, or perhaps the very thing that would change everything again. Sarah. Before she could finish, a deafening crash echoed from outside, a thunderous roar that added to the chaos inside the cafe, drawing every eye to the window. The storm outside had transformed the streets into a whirlwind of rain and darkness, yet through that storm a figure emerged from the shadows, soaked to the bone, and as the door swung open, time seemed to stall as a familiar silhouette crossed the threshold. Emma, Caleb whispered, his voice cracking like a whip, and the flicker of recognition painted dead silence over the room. Poised and perfect like a life barely held together by moments, my breath caught in my throat. There she stood, drenched and disheveled, as if summoned by some unseen force, drawn back into the storm that had been raging around us. The weight of unspoken truths hung thick as the imminent revelation clawed at the edges of my mind. In that moment, chaos gave way to clarity. The battle we thought we'd faced paled in comparison to the storm that had finally arrived. Secrets might claw at our heels, but perhaps it was time for them to be unveiled. I held my breath, knowing with terrible certainty that the storm's fury had only just begun. The cafe was eerily quiet, the rain pounding against the windows forming a rhythmic heartbeat, drumming out an anxious score to the scene that unfolded before us. Emma stood there, her hair plastered to her forehead, wide eyes locking onto Caleb's with a mixture of disbelief and something deeper, something raw that transcended mere surprise. Caleb, she rasped, her voice cracking under the weight of emotion that had been brewing for years. Is that really you? It felt as if the very air had thickened, heavy with the myriad unspoken words that stretched between them. Sarah stood frozen, her own world now contorted as she grappled with the reality of Emma's appearance. I could see the blood drain from her face, shock transforming into a tumult of rage and betrayal. Why are you here? Caleb's voice barely broke through the stillness, steadying himself against the counter, his face painted with conflicting emotions that mirrored the agony in Sarah's eyes. Emma's gaze flitted over the faces in the cafe, taking in the tension, the disbelief, the unraveling threads of secrets that hung oppressive in the air. I came back for you, she finally said, her voice softening, yet each word seemed to carry a tempest waiting to be unleashed. I thought maybe you were still waiting for me. Still waiting? Sarah interjected, her voice sharp and trembling. A new energy surged through her, a protective instinct burrowing deep into her core. After 3 years of silence and you just show up out of nowhere? The accusation hung over them like an electric current, thrumming under the surface and demanding to be acknowledged. Emma looked taken aback, her hazel eyes flickering with anguish and regret. I save it, Sarah snapped, her fists clenched so tightly that the knuckles gleamed like porcelain. The layers of heartbreak, of hope and despair, crashed within her in waves. You can't come back now and pretend it's that easy. You left. You chose to walk away. The electric charge in the room shifted, and for a moment I thought Caleb might reach out to Sarah, to comfort her, to reaffirm the life they had started to rebuild. But his gaze remained locked onto Emma, the connection between them too powerful, too haunting to ignore. I never wanted to leave, Emma whispered, her voice breaking as her own tears began a slow descent down her cheeks. I thought I could come back and it would be like before. But when I tried to reach you, I didn't know how to face the truth, not without hurting you both. Truth. Hurt? Sarah echoed, her voice rising. You think you can just waltz back into Caleb's life and everything will just fall into place? You don't know what we've been through since you left, what you left for us to deal with. Caleb took a cautious step toward Emma, drawn inexplicably to the heartache they once shared. Why now? His voice was a whisper filled with pleading urgency. Why would you come back now when I finally found a way to be okay again? Emma took a shuddering breath, her composure wavering. Because I realized what I lost when I turned my back on you. Not just you but our love, our little girl. The words hung in the air like a painful melody, a reminder of the loss that had turned their lives upside down. Your little girl? Sarah's voice turned brittle, each word transforming into steel. You've given her up, Emma. You can't just come crying back and act like you weren't part of that pain. I didn't mean to abandon you. Emma pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was protecting you both. I thought disappearing would be best for everyone. But then I saw pictures, heard about your life, and I couldn't bear the thought of not being in your world anymore. The anguish skittering across Sarah's face mirrored the guilt and sorrow etched deep within Caleb's heart. Emma's presence had added another layer to their turmoil. A fresh wound poured over an already festering scar. You think you can just rewrite the past? Sarah demanded, her voice raising unsteadily. You can't erase the hours we've spent piecing ourselves together. And you can't pretend that your absence hasn't torn this family apart. Caleb stood like a frail structure, swaying in the storm of emotions, caught between two worlds colliding. He turned his gaze from Emma back to Sarah, desperation etched on his features. I never wanted to choose between you two. A heavy silence followed, echoing the wordless cries of bitter conflict woven tightly between them. The cafe felt like a fortress under siege, the onslaught of emotions battering against its walls, threatening to break it apart. And just as it seemed the tempest might either recede or explode, a rustle came from the far corner of the cafe. A patron stood, the abruptness of their movement capturing everyone's attention. Excuse me, a middle-aged man said, a deep furrow etched across his brow. He wandered closer, the weight of his expression heavy. I couldn't help but overhear. But your little girl. Was her name Lily? The room fell into an agonizing quiet, the question cracking through the air like thunder. What did you just say? Caleb murmured, his voice thick with disbelief. The man nodded, an unexpected storm brewing in his steely gaze. I was a part of the investigation surrounding your loss years ago. There were reports, connections that need to be addressed. As they all stood in shock, unprepared for the revelations hanging in the balance, the world outside surged with ferocity in response to the storm they were all caught in, and for the first time questions loomed larger than the answers they sought. A forgotten past coiled around them like a noose, ready to be tightened as events spiraled out of control like the rain that battered the glass walls of the cafe, sealing them in a trap steeped in secrets, heartaches, and memories they could not escape. The storm had finally come, and it was only just beginning. The rhythm of the rain intensified outside, drowning every heartbeat in the cafe as silence hung heavy like a suspended curtain. Caleb's wide eyes met the deep-set gaze of the stranger. A tremor ran through his body as his mind raced, struggling to process what had just been spoken. Lily. The name lingered like an echo, bouncing off the ceramic tiles and settling itself upon the tight knot of grief that had reigned in his heart since that day. What do you mean? He finally managed, his voice cracking, the weight of the words straining against his throat. The man took a step closer, his rugged features softening in empathy. There were rumors about her disappearance, Caleb. I was one of the detectives who followed the case closely. I wasn't sure, but I think I have recently come across information, something that might connect to your daughter. To know, Sarah breathed, shaking her head adamantly as if denying the very existence of the possibility. This isn't real. You're just enough, Sarah, Caleb interjected quietly, his voice a fragile whisper in the storm. He was no longer just seeing Emma. He was confronted with the reality that had eluded them for so long, cloaked in shadow, lined with secrets still buried deep. If you know something, if you've seen her. The man inhaled deeply, bracing himself. There was a tip some years back, no solid proof, but the investigation suggested she might have been seen with someone. We were led to believe she was out there somewhere, perhaps in a different state. I didn't know how to tell you how to bring that back into your lives without reopening old wounds. A shiver raced down Caleb's spine as sorrow intermingled with a flicker of hope. Was it possible? Could there have been some thread connecting them all this time? Emma's hand shot out, fist trembling with suppressed emotion. You can't just dangle this information in front of us. If you're lying, I wouldn't come here after all this time if that were the case, he interrupted. His voice a steady pulse in the chaos. Maybe I should make sure you're not lying, Sarah shot back. Venom curling around her words, shielding herself. You don't know what you're stirring up. We've lost everything once. But what if she's alive? Caleb's voice was quivering now, the swell of yearning echoing against the walls of his heart. If there's even a chance, is it worth the risk, Caleb? Sarah's voice cracked, her defenses shattering under the weight of unresolved pain. She wrapped her arms around herself and stepped back, retreating into the depths of her anger. You easily forget what we went through, what it meant for us, and now you want to chase after a ghost. Chasing a ghost or not, she's our daughter, Caleb pleaded, desperation coating his every word, as if he were grasping onto the frayed ends of an unraveling tapestry. The man nodded slowly, sensing the turmoil erupting within them. I understand how difficult this must be, but if there's even a shred of hope left, wouldn't you want answers? The cafe now felt like an emotional battleground, bruised hearts drenched in fear and longing. As the rain continued to beat against the glass, a sense of impending choices loomed like dark clouds above them. I can help, the man continued, glancing between them. If you're willing to dig deeper, to confront whatever it is you left behind, I can put you in contact with people who still remember her, who might know more. Dig deeper? Emma echoed, her voice becoming stronger, a mix of heartbreak and determination igniting her spirit. You expect us to just drop everything? Invest in a past we thought was dead? I expected nothing, the man replied gently, his eyes softening. But hope is a powerful thing. A silence fell again, pregnant with the weight of possibilities, stretching into the air like limbs of a tree desperate to reach sunlight. Caleb looked at both women, his heart shredded, burning with an unyielding desire to reclaim what had been lost. What if it leads us to Lily? His voice was a muted war cry, resonating through the tempest of emotions, calling for them to step together into the fray. What if we can bring her home? But just as the flickers of hope began to take flight, Sarah turned, her movements sharp as glass, her tears spilling down a face punctured with conflict. What if it breaks us all over again? The door to the cafe swung open, letting in a rush of wind that carried with it disappointment and new burdens. The stranger stepped back, his expression turning somber, as fear draped over them like a heavy shroud, and perhaps, just then, the storm outside mirrored the tumult within. The rain blurred the lines between their hopes and fears, washing away certainty and leaving behind nothing but questions yet again. The unshed tears, the unsaid words, the potential for either reconciliation or ruin lingered in the space between them. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, casting shadows against the walls, and the atmosphere thickened with tension. Caleb's heart raced at the ominous chill that swept through the space as the clatter of footfalls approached. Caleb? A new voice emerged, harsh and desperate, echoing across the cafe. A woman stepped into view, ragged and disheveled, her eyes wide with desperation. I've come for my daughter. A gasp reverberated through the cafe as recognition dawned, a specter from the past, rising once more to shatter the fragile peace that had barely begun to emerge. The cafe fell silent as the woman stepped forward, each breath rippling through the gathering storm of emotions. Caleb's face drained of color, and Sarah's expression froze, caught between disbelief and the haunting threads of love and loss that had woven their lives together. Your daughter? He echoed, voice barely above a whisper. The woman's face was marked with exhaustion, her eyes wide and frantic as she surveyed the room. I know you were looking for her, she cried, voice cracking under the weight of her desperation. My Lily, she's alive. I have to tell you what happened. Stunned silence enveloped the room. Time hung suspended in the balance of unspoken truths and aching memories. I felt my heart pound against my chest as I took a step forward, compelled by the sheer gravity of her presence. The air was thick with anticipation, the promises of revelations trembling just out of reach. Lily? Caleb breathed, his voice barely holding back the tumult of emotion brewing beneath the surface. You know where she is? Yes. The woman's words rushed forth like a dam breaking, raw and unchecked. I was there the night she disappeared. I didn't plan for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. She turned, her gaze fierce and pleading as it swept across the room, locking onto Caleb with renewed urgency. But I have to tell you what happened. You need to know the truth. What truth? Sarah's voice cut through the tension, each word tinged with skepticism and fury. You've ripped open wounds no one was ready to face, and now you demand we trust you. Please just listen, the woman pleaded, urgency seeping into her voice. My daughter, she remembers something. I've heard her calling out for you. She's been trying to find her way back to you, Caleb. Her eyes softened, the weight of her words enveloping us all. I can lead you to her, but it depends on whether you're ready to confront the past. A rising swell of hope surged through me, colliding violently with the undercurrent of despair that had woven its way into this tumultuous tapestry of lives. Caleb's hands trembled, glancing between Sarah and Emma, each a piece of a fractured whole he never wanted to choose between. You've seen her, he breathed, each word quivering with conviction. A wild glimmer lit in his eyes. I need to see her, that I need you all to trust me, the woman said, as the storm outside suddenly raged with renewed fervor, casting shadows that danced across the cafe. There are people who want you to find her. She's in hiding. They who? Sarah's voice rose, a sharp blade cutting through the chaos. Why would anyone want to keep a child from her parents? The woman hesitated, then her voice lowered. Because she's part of something bigger, Caleb. Something dangerous. If they find out you're looking for her, they'll do anything to keep her. You have to decide what you're willing to risk. The weight of her words settled over us like a dense fog, blurring the lines of trust and vulnerability. Caleb's breath hitched in his throat, eyes darting between the fragments of his shattered family, the pieces he'd once held dear, now carried through the storm of uncertainty. We have to try, Emma implored, determination igniting within her. No matter the risks, we owe it to her and to ourselves. Sarah, caught between resentment and a hope she had almost buried beneath the weight of her heartache, inhaled shakily. But how do we trust you? Her hands were balled into fists, the anger flickering in her eyes like a flame that could either ignite or burn. I was scared, the woman said, her voice trembling. I lost my daughter too. The world we were swept into, it kept me silent for so long. I watched the news, I heard the stories. I know what you've endured. I just want to help you find her. The cafe trembled with energy, the echoing rain outside pounding against the windows like a drummer matching the racing beats of our hearts. So we follow you, we take that leap, Caleb said, urgency crackling in his words. If there's even a chance Lily's alive. Now, not just alive, the woman nodded, voice resolute. But she needs you. Trust in that, and we can work together to bring her home. Please come with me. Time is running out. With every passing heartbeat, the stakes surged, an emotional leap into the fog of uncertainty, a journey laden with potential redemption or despair. As they exchanged glances, I saw the enormity of their decision reflected in each pair of eyes, holding stories yearning to be told and wounds begging for healing. Caleb stepped forward, hand outstretched. If you're leading us to her, then we trust you. A unity forged in desperation and hope wrapped around them like an anchor. Sarah hesitated, weighed down by the shadows of her past, but eventually took Caleb's hand. If this is true, if this will lead us to Lily, then I'll do whatever it takes. Her voice wavered, yet it sang with a fragile determination that ignited the fading embers of hope swirling amidst the chaos. Emma? Caleb turned to her, urgency pooling within his eyes like a challenge thrown into churning waters. She nodded, resolute. We fight for her presence in our lives, wherever that may lead. The determination in her voice resonated deep, merging imbued strength with the fervor of rediscovering a love once lost. Without another word, the darkness of uncertainty intermingled with the glimmer of hope as they stepped toward the mysterious woman, their hands entwining with purpose and direction. They wove through the cafe's entrance, disappearing into the tempest that raged outside, their journey stretching beyond the veil of heartache, lighting a path toward healing, reunion, and the homecoming of their daughter. As the door closed behind them, I felt the weight of the moment settle in, a breath of fresh air mingling with the smell of rain against warm pavement. This was no longer just a story of struggle or heartbreak, but a vibrant testament to hope refusing to fade. Tomorrow held promise, yet in this moment, the fear intertwined with possibility resonated like a symphony, illuminating what lay ahead. As the sound of their footsteps faded into the distance, I understood the one indelible truth. Life's storms could reshape us, shatter our lives to pieces, and steer us down dark paths. Yet, through it all, the threads of love and hope would weave stories anew, igniting light into even the most haunting shadows. In love's relentless quest for redemption, Every storm eventually faded, revealing the treasures waiting just beyond the horizon of despair.